Wandavision has introduced another powerful magic user into the MCU in the form of Wanda Maximoff's comic book mentor, Agatha Harkness. Obviously, there are quite a bit of differences between how Agatha appears in the show and how she appears in the comics, but this character has been around for quite a while and has straddled the line between good and evil, so in today's video, we are going to cover the comic book history of Agatha Harkness. Agatha Harkness's first comic book appearance was all the way back in 1970's Fantastic Four number 94. Susan Storm and Reed Richards had recently had a child. That child, named Franklin Richards, eventually goes on to become one of the most powerful mutants in comic book history, but at this point in time he was just a little baby. Marvel's first family, like most working adults, needed a nanny, and they traveled to the home of famed child-rearing expert Agatha Harkness for a super challenge. When they arrived, they were introduced to what seemed like a harmless but well-mannered older woman who was to serve as Franklin's nanny. However, not soon after the arrival, the team was systematically attacked and defeated by the Frightful Four: the Wizard, Sandman, Trapster, and Medusa. The Frightful Four went on to attempt to capture the child, and that's when things got personal. The team of fearsome villains gets absolutely wrecked by the mild-mannered Harkness, using abilities the villains weren't prepared for. When the Fantastic Four regroup, they notice that the Frightful Four had been slapped, and they rush to Franklin's aid. They find Franklin is sound asleep with Harkness watching over him diligently. While she initially doesn't reveal to the Fantastic Four that she has powers and abilities, the team went on to employ her as Franklin's permanent caretaker and nanny, with some suspicion. Now, normally, I would go back and explain when and where Agatha was born, her early life, blah blah blah, anything that we need to flesh out the backstory of the character, but we really don't have much on her super early life. In fact, we learn in Silver Surfer 135 that Agatha is over 10,500 years old. She states that when Dr.Strange was just a mass of cells, she'd been practicing magic for untold centuries. And because of that, we're going to jump around throughout Marvel's timeline, so just kind of deal with it. I'm going to do my best to try and make it make sense for you. As I stated before, chronologically, no one really knows where Agatha was born. Being over 10,000 years old, she was around before the fall of Atlantis. She walked the earth for untold centuries, learning the mystical arts, and within the established canon of her backstory, Agatha's first major appearance was in 1692 in Salem. The mutant Firestar was sent backwards in time, and when she arrives in the past, the townfolk of Salem take her to be a witch due to her abilities and her outfit, which is, come on, it's ridiculous. Firestar almost retaliates and burns these old-timey fools to ash, but before she attacks the townspeople, a voice inside of her head summons her to the outskirts of Salem. There she meets Agatha, who explains that Agatha is a witch, and then stuff gets kinda dark. Agatha is forming a new and more powerful coven of witches, and in order for her coven to grow as strong as possible, she's allowing the townsfolk to kill any witches that are unable to defend themselves against the townspeople. Agatha has even gone as far as to turn in several members of her own coven just to see if they could survive. Agatha asks Firestar to gain dominance over mankind in order to end the future persecution that mutants and other beings such as witches will experience at the hands of mankind in the future. Firestar refuses and battles Agatha, who eventually backs down and agrees to live apart from mankind. Agatha founds a new town known as New Salem, to be inhabited by magic users and witches. However, after this, at an undisclosed point in time and for unknown reasons, Agatha does decide to leave New Salem and live among mankind. So as I mentioned before, Agatha is employed by the Fantastic Four to look over Franklin. She also spends some time assisting the Fantastic Four on multiple adventures, and she does eventually reveal her magical abilities to the team. However, when Agatha's son, Nicholas Scratch, has her captured and returned to New Salem, insisting that she's a traitor for fraternizing with non-magical humans, it's up to the Fantastic Four to save her this time. The Fantastic Four fight Agatha's grandchildren, the Salem Seven, and reveal to the people of New Salem that Agatha had not betrayed them, and that the only reason that anybody knew of New Salem was because Scratch abducted Harkness in the first place, forcing them to attempt a rescue. The Salem residents turn on Scratch and banish him and move their town again so it can't be easily found this time. Agatha does go on to consult and assist in many Fantastic Four and Avengers stories before she retires from serving as Franklin's governess and nanny. She instead asks that she be allowed to train the Scarlet Witch, whom she was recently introduced to and identifies as a very powerful magic user. Agatha and Scarlet Witch return to Avengers Mansion, where they are attacked by a being known as Necrodamus. He's a villain who has tangled with the Defenders in the past, and he's attempting to steal Agatha's immortal soul so that he can be reborn even more powerful. Agatha and Scarlet Witch fight Necrodamus, and he easily dispatches Agatha. In fact, it's like way too easy before he turns his attention on Scarlet Witch. She attempts to fight back, but at this point in her history, Wanda suffers tremendous physical exhaustion from using her hex magic. Using her hex magic 3 times against Necrodamus drains her to the point that she nearly dies. Necrodamus attempts to capture Scarlet Witch and Agatha's soul in this mysterious lunchbox of magic that he brought, but Wanda ends up destroying the box in an unprecedented 4th hex magic spell. When she does this, it frees a wave of souls that sweep over Necrodamus. Agatha pulls Wanda from the swirling soul vortex and reveals that she was fine the entire time. She was just using the attack as a training exercise, a sort of magical baptism by fire. So Wanda's tutoring had officially already begun. However, Agatha's next major event is pretty rough. She is again captured by the Salem 7, except this time, the Salem 7 rather unceremoniously burn her at the stake. This ends the comic book history and life of Agatha Harkness. I hope you guys learned a lot in this video, and if you did, consider— no, I'm kidding, there's actually way more. Let's keep going. Now, if you've seen my video on the comic book origins of Billy and Tommy Maximoff, you've already heard most of this, but Vision and Scarlet Witch stumble upon the hidden town of New Salem and come into direct conflict with the Salem 7 and Vertigo, the most powerful witch among them. When Agatha dies, Vertigo absorbs her power and becomes the most powerful witch in New Salem. This leads to the final showdown between Scarlet Witch, Vision, and Vertigo. Vertigo is powered by all of the witches within New Salem and the powers of Agatha Harkness. However, she gets hit by a massive solar blast from Vision and loses control of that power. At this point, the astral form of Agatha Harkness shows up and guides Scarlet Witch through the process of channeling the immense magical energy that is now available in the world. Wanda is able to save the town, but Agatha also tells her to use the power when she's channeling it, and what Wanda does with that power is actually quite impressive. She uses the magical energy that she gained to impregnate herself and create life. Now again, for way more context on this, check out our video on Billy and Tommy Maximoff, but if you have seen that video, you know that this doesn't end well. The boys are eventually revealed to be pieces of the demon Mephisto's soul that Wanda was able to channel and use to create life. When Mephisto reabsorbs the pieces of his soul, the boys are erased from reality. The subsequent trauma from this event causes Wanda considerable emotional pain, and a recently revived Agatha must wipe her memories of the children. How does Agatha revive herself? Nobody knows, because it's never explained, because this is comics. Many years later, during the events of Avengers Disassembled, Wanda confronts Agatha about the whereabouts of her children, whose memories had returned to her. Agatha explains the events that took place, and Wanda again begins to construct a reality where she's able to play the happy mother and wife. The Avengers confront her, and Dr. Strange is able to stop her rampage. However, when Nick Fury attempts to debrief Agatha, he finds her corpse. It had been dead long enough to self-mummify, which is really creepy. And it kind of plays with the idea that Agatha may or may not be dead at any point in time. We really aren't sure. And that is the major plot points for Agatha Harkness's existence in the comics. She's a pretty interesting magical user and undoubtedly extremely powerful. She's capable of fighting whole teams of villains and easily dispatching them, but her motivations for assisting or interfering are always unknown and mysterious. She's a really creepy character, and it's super interesting to see what they're doing with her in the show. I hope you learned a lot, and if you did, I ask that you share the video, hit subscribe, and the bell for notifications. This has been Nick with Key Issues. Thank you for watching, and remember the motto, Agatha over everything.